just shock the gospel world, it cracked it wide open. Because when Pastor Hezekiah Walker's ex-wife, Monnique Walker, finally became the center of whispers, rumors, and a scandal nobody could fully explain, one question refused to die: what really happened behind those church walls? And why did Monnique Walker choose silence when the world demanded noise?
Our choir anniversary. So at the end of the concert, he said, "Monnique." Then he said, "Will you marry me?" And I'm like, what? Like, is this happening right now?
It was our choir anniversary. So at the end of the concert, he said, "Monnique." Then he said, "Will you marry me?" And I'm like, what? Like, is this happening right now? That moment felt like destiny. Public, emotional, almost cinematic. But look closer, because sometimes the loudest beginnings hide the quietest warnings. Monnique Walker stood there, stunned, caught between love and disbelief. A proposal in front of witnesses. A story that sounded too perfect. And that's where the pattern begins. Because when everything looks perfect on the surface, something deeper is often being carefully concealed. Before the world attached her name to controversy, Monnique Walker was already living a life most people in gospel circles never even knew existed. Broadway stages, international tours. Names like Morgan Freeman orbiting her story long before the church world claimed her. But why wasn't this part celebrated? Why was it almost erased from the narrative? Because sometimes the version of you that the world accepts is smaller than the truth you actually lived. Brooklyn raised her. The institutional church of God in Christ shaped her. Monnique Walker didn't just grow up in church, she was the church. Every note she sang carried legacy. Every Sunday night, her voice traveled beyond walls, beyond boroughs, beyond expectations. But even then, there was something forming beneath the surface, a path that would connect her directly to Hezekiah Walker.
I grew up in my grandfather's church, which is the Institutional Church of God in Christ.
Right.
And they had, from a child, the singing. They were, let me see, I guess they were like I don't know who to say the hottest choir is now.
And here is where the first secret begins to take shape. Because while most people's introduction to Monnique Walker came through a gospel choir, hers began on a Broadway stage. But we'll get to that in just a moment. Secrets don't appear suddenly. They build, quietly, piece by piece. And Monnique Walker's story was already carrying layers the public hadn't even started to uncover. When she met Hezekiah Walker inside the Soul Stirrers Crusade Choir, it looked ordinary. Just two choir members, just another connection. But nothing about this connection would remain ordinary for long. Because what followed wasn't just a relationship, it was a merger of influence, talent, and power. Monnique Walker's voice didn't just blend into Hezekiah Walker's choir. It dominated. It elevated. It transformed the entire sound. Audiences weren't just listening anymore, they were reacting, responding, showing up specifically for Monnique Walker. And here's where the tension begins to quietly build. Because when one voice becomes the center of attention in a space built on collective identity, imbalance starts to form. Who was really carrying the success? Who was really shaping the legacy? And more importantly, who was getting the credit? Their marriage in 1992 looked like confirmation, like alignment, like everything was exactly as it should be. Monnique Walker and Hezekiah Walker, two names now tied together not just spiritually, but personally. Their daughter, Kayasha Nona Walker, became the symbol of that union, a family, a foundation, a story the gospel world could celebrate. But behind every celebrated story, there's a version that never gets told. The music soared, Grammy Awards, Stellar Awards, chart-topping records. Monnique Walker's voice was everywhere, second chance, thank you, he's on your side. Each performance wasn't just technical, it was emotional, raw, almost too real, like she was singing from a place people couldn't fully understand yet. And that's the detail that becomes impossible to ignore later. Because when the scandal hit in 2006, it didn't feel random. It felt like something that had been building quietly for years. Reports exploded across the internet, claims about Hezekiah Walker, accusations that shook the very foundation of his public identity. Words like secret lifestyle, betrayal, painful divorce suddenly attached themselves to names that once represented stability. And right in the center of it all, Monnique Walker. The claims were explosive, too explosive. Allegations that went beyond rumor and into something deeply personal, something damaging, something that couldn't just be ignored. Hezekiah Walker denied everything. Statements were issued, retractions followed, apologies appeared. But by then, it didn't matter, because once a story enters the public mind, it doesn't leave. It lingers, it evolves, it mutates. And here's the part that still confuses people to this day. Monnique Walker said nothing. No interviews, no emotional breakdowns, no public defense, just silence. A silence so loud it started to feel intentional, strategic, almost like she knew something the public didn't. Why stay quiet when your name is everywhere? Why not correct the narrative? Why not take control of the story? Unless staying silent was the only way to survive it. Because sometimes speaking gives power to the chaos. And silence keeps the truth locked exactly where it needs to be. Monnique Walker didn't run to the spotlight. She stepped away from it, focused on her daughter, focused on her calling. While the world dissected her life, she continued moving forward as if the noise didn't exist. But silence doesn't erase questions. It creates more of them. And those questions, they're still hanging in the air. Unanswered, unresolved, waiting. And just when it seemed like the storm had taken everything it could, something unexpected happened. Not noise, not revenge, not exposure, but evolution. Because while the world kept replaying headlines, Monnique Walker quietly began rewriting the ending nobody thought she would control. The divorce didn't arrive with fireworks. It came with distance. Years of distance. Years where communication disappeared. Where silence stretched not just across media, but across personal reality. And yet, when the final chapter closed in 2016 after 24 years, it didn't explode. It settled, almost unnaturally calm for a story that had once felt so volatile. That calm raises another question. How do two people walk through a storm that public and still choose peace at the end? Because Monnique Walker and Hezekiah Walker didn't just separate, they recalibrated. Not for headlines, not for image, but for Kayasha Nona Walker. That choice matters, because in stories like this, there's usually bitterness, there's usually public fallout. But here, there was restraint. And restraint always suggests something deeper, something controlled, something intentional. Then came the shift that many people didn't fully notice. Monnique Walker stepped into her own name, My Genesis. Not just an album title, it was a statement, a reset, a quiet declaration that whatever had happened before would not define what came next. And listen closely to that detail, because My Genesis wasn't polished perfection. It was lived experience. Every note carried weight. Every lyric felt like it had been pulled from somewhere real, somewhere tested. Tried in the Fire wasn't just a song, it sounded like evidence. Starting All Over wasn't just a track, it sounded like a confession without words. And that's where the pattern becomes impossible to ignore. Monnique Walker never told the story directly. She expressed it through music, through ministry, through presence. And maybe that was the real response all along, because while people were waiting for statements, Monnique Walker was building something quieter but stronger, a ministry, a calling that existed long before the scandal ever attached itself to her name. Back in 1982, guided by shepherd mother Elvonia Williams, that calling had already been accepted, already been rooted. So when everything else shook, that foundation didn't. And that explains everything. Because Monnique Walker isn't just a singer who became a preacher. Monnique Walker is a preacher who never stopped being one, even when standing on stages, even when touring globally, even when her voice was carrying entire choirs to the top of the charts. That identity protected her, grounded her, kept her from reacting the way the world expected. But here's where the story circles back in a way nobody could script. August 14th, 2021, Riverside Church, New York City. Kayasha Nona Walker walking down the aisle. A moment that should have been simple, joyful, complete. But look closer, because standing there were both Monnique Walker and Hezekiah Walker, not divided, not distant, present, together in a way that history said shouldn't be possible. That image alone says more than any interview ever could. Because whatever happened, whatever truth lives behind the silence, it didn't destroy everything. It didn't erase the connection. It didn't break the ability to stand in the same room for something that mattered. And when B.B. Winans called it pure love and family, it didn't sound like exaggeration. It sounded like confirmation. Hezekiah Walker even said it plainly: what the devil tried to do, it didn't work. But here's the part that still lingers. If it didn't work, then what exactly was it? Because the story was retracted, the claims were denied, the headlines faded. faded, but the questions never fully disappeared. They just went quiet, just like Monnique Walker did. And maybe that's why this story refuses to close, because it was never fully told. Monnique Walker continues traveling, preaching, singing, moving across countries, across stages, across lives, not chasing attention, not correcting narratives, just continuing. And that kind of consistency, that kind of refusal to engage with chaos, it doesn't come from weakness. It comes from knowing something the public still doesn't, something that never needed to be explained because it was never meant to be. So the question remains, was the silence protection or was it power? And if the truth was never spoken out loud, does that mean it was never meant to be heard? Or does it mean it's still waiting?